Let's bring in criminal defense attorney Bob Bianchi and Joseph Scott Morgen, forensics expert and former senior investigator at the Fulton County Medical Examiner's Office. Gentlemen, thank you for being with us this morning. But Robert, I want to go to you first. How hard is this case going to be for the public defender to prove and really get him off the hook when you have all of these details in this affidavit?
Well, having been a death penalty prosecutor, I can tell you what the public defender's office is going to be doing right now. The circumstantial evidence is so strong with the phones, the timeline with regard to the victimology, the timeline with regard to the car. So what you do in a situation like this is, and this is the mantra that defense attorneys have, if it's going to be filed as a death penalty case, is keep him alive another hour, another minute, another second. What they're going to be trying to do is not so much to say, hey, he didn't do it, but if the client gives permission, can we take this out of the death penalty and do a life without parole sentence? So the real question becomes not so much what can the defense do to get out, but what is the prosecutor going to do here? Are they going to file this as a death penalty case, which I suspect, looking at Idaho law, there are about 6 aggravating factors that apply here. So the prosecutor's got to stay strong. And in my opinion, as I've indicated to your producers and others, when I was a prosecutor prosecuting murder cases, this isn't a case where I'd even offer a plea offer. So what the defense attorney essentially is going to do is say to the state, prove your case. We'll have to wait and see what they ultimately come up with, if there's any other explanation. But the evidence, very powerful.
Joseph, from a forensics perspective, what was your initial reaction, your key takeaways from the affidavit, and what holes are in the affidavit that you still want filled?
Well, I got to tell you, certainly my first blush was that I was overwhelmed. I don't know that in memory, I have seen a document like this where you've got so much data that they talked about. The tiebacks with DNA, we've got DNA actually left behind on the button snap of the sheet that had been left in the bed next to one of the victims. That is just overwhelming. You don't have a knife, but you do have the sheath that originates with a K-bar knife that we've talked about for some time. Then you have this DNA that was collected out of the trash back at the parents' home in Pennsylvania. Not to mention everything else relative to these timestamps. And one more thing that we have to mention is this footprint. There was actually a footprint found on the floor adjacent to DM's room, and it comes back to what appears to be a Van-style shoe. Now, what do I want to see? Right now, what they're doing is they are taking this car apart. There's so much more that we don't know about the vehicle relative to physical evidence. If he got into that car after this murderous rampage, he would have essentially bathed that area in DNA because he would have been covered in blood. And if you get this kind of commingled mixture of the blood of the victims that's found inside of that vehicle, all of these different blood groupings, the specific DNA tiebacks to these victims, it's an overwhelming amount of evidence that I think that the defense would have a very difficult time explaining away.
Bob, I want you to speak to the fact that there were so many people that we've heard on our network, other networks, social media everywhere, just really having no faith in this police department, sometimes the FBI even, because it seemed like it was going cold there for so long. And not only that, but when you look at the affidavit and the roommate who came face to face with the suspected killer, trying to keep that under wraps, the fact that it didn't leak, I think, speaks volumes.
Oh, trust me, I've been doing this a long time, and that was the biggest problem that I had as a prosecutor. You don't want this information to leak because they're following up leads, and you don't want to taint witnesses. Let's not forget here that piece of evidence that she gave about him having bushy eyebrows, them sending out Ebola or be on the lookout for this vehicle. This case was really solved because 2 Washington State officers, because law enforcement knew what they were looking for, noticed the vehicle in the parking lot at Washington State University ran it down, got the picture of the defendant in the case, noticed that he had bushy eyebrows, and that's what set this off. So it is amazing that it was tight. Listen, I have to be honest, though. Their media management in the beginning was very poor, and that led to a lot of reasons why people felt that maybe they weren't working well in the sandbox because law enforcement agencies were saying different things. Last point I'd like to bring out here, from reading this affidavit and having done this a long time, listen, the guy's goose is cooked as far as the evidence in this case is, but this led me to the conclusion that if I were still in the game, I would be contacting law enforcement officers from any place this guy has gone to that I could figure out to find out if there's any other dead bodies that mysteriously have unsolved cold case things, because this is just an unusual thing for a guy to go out on a first one-off and murder people like this when he's been plotting and planning it, according to this affidavit, for 3 months. There's something with the creep factor in this case.
Yeah, one of our frequent guests, Jonathan T. Gilliam, said the exact same thing on another show. He's an FBI guy. Curious that you both said that, something that we will be looking into. Joseph, final question to you. You mentioned the depth of detail in the affidavit, and that is 100% true. But one question I still have, and I don't know if you can expound upon this, why does there appear to be that 8-hour gap between when the roommate, who's still alive, encountered the defendant and when that roommate then called 911, or when the 911 call was made? Thoughts?
Yeah, massive mystery. I don't know if, some people have actually opined that she may have passed out at that point in time. We don't know what her status was physically. How was it that the police, 911, wasn't alerted? We've got a huge gap of time. And, I got to tell you, I got to be honest with you here. I think that as time goes by, there's going to be much more revealed relative to this timeline going forward. We didn't know when any of this had occurred. Actually, there were only just speculative guesses at best relative to everything that had occurred that morning. Now we've kind of tightened that down. I think that this will continue to have a sharper focus as we go forward. More information is going to come out, and we're going to find out what the status of DM is. I know right now she's probably the key witness in this case.
Mm-hmm. Gentlemen, that's what expert analysis looks like. Robert Bianchi, Joseph Scott Morgen, thank you so much.
Thank
Very
you.
much appreciated. Journey to a story.